I am going to record the session so people can get the replays. So we'll go ahead and get started. I am so excited, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us. And we actually met about a year ago, so it's hard to believe the year has gone by. Yeah. So Rebecca, I'm going to just have you go ahead and start introducing yourself and then tell us a little bit about you. And I know you have a little one. Well, she's not little anymore.
She's littler than me, so
so just tell us a little bit about your birth experience and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here with you, Margaret, and with your tribe of wonderful people. And just, I think it's awesome what you are doing and wanting to support the sovereignty of women, or, as they enter the birth experience and beyond. So my name is Rebecca Hazelton, and I'm a licensed nutritionist and a transformational health and wellness coach. I love to work with people to really holistically support their bodies. Areas of specialty for me are gut health. I truly believe that the gut is at the root of health or disease, depending on which way it's going. So the power of the gut to really inform the body about what it needs to be healthy is massively powerful. So that's an area I love to educate on, and just really like using food as nourishment rather than how it tends to get distorted, as far as, how we tend to obsess about our bodies, our weight. I really think, food is fuel, and if we're doing it right, it's delicious fuel. And having a healthy relationship with food, no matter what state the body, whether it be before conceiving, during pregnancy, beyond, how we are in relationship with food, with our families, with our children, I think is so important. So that's a bit about me as far as my professional life. And my daughter just turned 12, and she's an amazing girl. We have had a wonderful relationship from the beginning, but also how she came into this world is probably very poetic, as far as our dynamic, since then. So I opted to have a home birth, and I had a nurse midwife. And actually, it's so funny, Margaret, like you really remind me of her in so many ways. And I remember just like when I met her, I knew she was somebody I wanted in my corner. She had so much experience and wisdom, so much trust in women's bodies. I just felt like that blended right over to me at the very beginning. Like she just gave me permission to really honor my body wisdom, and that my body knew what to do. My body, women's bodies know how to birth. And yes, there are things that can go awry, but she had a lot of experience that she brought to the table. So I felt very safe. She held space for me, and I was able to have a healthy home birth. And it was actually a really awesome experience for the most part. I did have a little, I don't call it complication, because there was never at any point that my daughter or I were at risk, right? It just made for some challenges there. But I had been pushing. So my push period was 4.5 hours, which is very long. So if you've gone through birth yourselves, like that's a really long push period. And my nurse midwife had told me, she's like, if you had been in a hospital, they would have like been pushing you to get a C-section to move things along. But I didn't need a C-section. I just my daughter was the term like asynclitic? Is that the term? Asynclitic. So I kept having this like feeling that I needed to urinate, but I wasn't urinating. And my midwife like noticed that, but lots was going on. But every time I would get up, to go to the restroom, that's when I would have my most powerful contractions. I was having these really short contractions whenever they put me in, like, okay, let's try it on the birth stool or the ball, or like, and pushing when you're not having a contraction is like trying to push against a brick wall. Like, it doesn't work at all. So I could talk about it for a long time. I'll try to keep it more concise here. I gave birth to her standing up in a squat position with, many hands. I had my nurse midwife, my husband, and a doula, like, all there. But what was really amazing was that they were like, catch your baby, she's coming. And they just meant, like, you can grab you got this, and I was able to, and I did have that, and I got her, and it was absolutely amazing. I'm very blessed to have had that experience, to have her at home. It was so amazing. And just being able to, like, crawl into bed after that long season of pushing was really awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing that. What a special, empowering time, right?
Yeah. It was definitely like a dance. Like,
yeah.
every time, she checked my daughter's vitals, it was just like, she's there with you dancing. Like, she's good. Like, I know this is harder. It's taking longer than you wanted, but, like, you're both good. Like, you got this. That was really, yeah. So, like, that's poetic to life, right? Like, raising children can really feel like, oh my God, do I have this? Yeah, like, we got this. It's tricky at times, but we got this.
Aww. Cool. So, one of the things, I know nutrition is so freaking important in life in general, but it's one way we can zestfully support our baby. And it does matter what we eat especially when we're pregnant, and that's just a huge responsibility, I think, because it just makes you more aware of every bite you take. For most people anyways. And so what would you say for even somebody that's planning on becoming pregnant, what is like a really good thing nutritionally wise to help them be ready for this really transformative time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I love working with women kind of when they're planning. I mean, people plan at different times. Like, I personally planned very far ahead just because of what I had learned about preparing the soil. And, kind of like, the time to remove toxins is not when you're pregnant, not when you're breastfeeding. It's like, if you want to detox or cleanse or heal, that time is before getting pregnant. I mean, there's no wrong time. Like, you can take in nourishing, healing foods when you're pregnant, of course. So if there's something that you're specifically trying to heal from, the best time to do that is, a year or more before you're looking to conceive, just so that you can really stabilize your system, feel at peace within your body, feel that harmony, and have a good idea about what your normal feels like. Because it's all going to change when you get pregnant. I had a really good baseline established for myself, but man, were my pregnancy cravings like out of this world, like a force way beyond myself. And it really surprised me. So, like, if anyone listening to this has gone through that or might go through that, I just want to, like, let you know, like, I get it. And it can feel really strange. Everyone's pregnancy experience is unique. So, what goes for one person is not going to be universal. So some of, like, those universal things I can mention are, do prepare as, early as you can, so that you can really start what we call building up the soil, getting some great nutrition foundation in there, getting the vitamins and minerals is what I'm referring to, getting your vitamins and minerals at a really great level through nourishing foods, through getting really good sleep, through, moving your body, obviously managing stress. Like, you're going to need all of those things times 10 when you're pregnant and beyond, right? Postpartum. So preparing, the soil during pregnancy. Well, actually, let me pause. Any questions about that part before I go into the next part? Okay. So when you're pregnant, your appetite can be all over the place. And I know that, as I mentioned, like, you can have cravings for things that are not going to help support you nutritionally at all, right? They can even be the opposite of that. Like, they can be nutrient robbers. So things like sugar, processed foods, things that taste really good. And when you feel awful and queasy or you're throwing up, like, it makes sense to just want to like go with whatever you're craving. I really understand that. I had morning sickness that was, it started like 2 days before my second trimester. I didn't have any in the first trimester. I'm like, yes, I got through this with no morning sickness. Just kidding. It was the rest of the pregnancy. So, and there were many things, like there would be like one thing that would appeal to me out of everything. So whatever your experience is, looking at how you can up level it to make it nutritious, like, are you craving, carbohydrates or protein or something spicy? Like, what whole food version of that can you have versus processed? And, there can be like really well prepared food for you. Doesn't mean you have to make everything from scratch. Knowing which restaurants might source really good quality ingredients. If you just feel totally crummy, or just don't want to make that food yourself, just how can I bring the best nutrition in here no matter what my craving situation is? So plant foods are loaded with vitamins and minerals, and you also really need protein. I mean, your body, you're building a person. So the protein turnover is exponential. So getting in good quality, clean, sourced protein sources, whether that be plant or animal, so grass-fed meats, pastured poultry, wild caught, not farmed seafoods, pastured free-range organic eggs, non-GMO sources of soy, dairy. If you tolerate dairy, grass-fed dairy is more nutritious. Has more of the nutrients like vitamin K and A than its non-organic or non-grass-fed counterparts. So those are all really good sources of protein. And then we always hear eat the rainbow. Well, there's some legitimacy to that, because different colored plants do offer different nutrients, different vitamins and minerals. So an example of that would be, vitamin A is really important for eye development and the immune system development. Well, you want to be getting your orange and yellows, eating those foods that are orange and yellow. The dark greens, you're going to be getting vitamin K, which is super important for bone health and blood clotting. So those would be some examples of what, to eat a variety of foods that appeals to you. And I always say, getting the cleanest sources is really important. So some of you might be aware of the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 lists by Environmental Working Group. But yeah, seeing some nods. So that's, if you're aware of it, great. If you're not, then now you do know. Those are really helpful for helping you source the cleanest, least sprayed, least pesticide, fungicide, herbicide, produce items in your area, depending on the season. So they put out a list this nonprofit puts out a list every year of the Dirty Dozen, which are the most heavily chemicalized, sprayed produce items. So those are the ones that you really want to make sure you're sourcing organic. Or if you can't source it organic, I mean, peeling it's not always going to do the job because a lot of those chemicals permeate through the fruit or veg. So washing it or peeling it may be insufficient for actually protecting you from those chemicals. So I say, pick something else. Pick something else that's similar color, something else you like that isn't sprayed as much. And that's what the Clean 15 list is for, is the least sprayed, least chemicalized produce items. And it does change a little bit year to year, but that's a great resource that you can use when trying to seek out, like, what am I going to feed myself? And how do I, make sure I'm getting nutrition, but I'm also passing along clean nutrition to this baby that I'm growing.
So I know like the protein is like hugely important, especially during just before 28 to 30 weeks, because our blood volume is going up by 50%. And so it's even more hugely important to get that protein in. I don't remember what the normal grams are, but I know for pregnancy, it's like 60 to 90 grams of protein per day. And if I was I'm not vegetarian, but thank goodness, but if I was vegetarian, how can I get those proteins?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And yes, it's amazing what the blood volume does. And so, I just had a sip of water and protein and water and iron. Like, what are the constituents for building good blood? Eating beets, getting that chlorophyll from the greens, hydrating. I mean, you are needing you need a lot of fluid, and you need a good amount of protein. And that amount of protein isn't really, I eat a lot of protein, right? So I'm like, it's not that hard, but it can be for some people to, if they just don't gravitate to protein foods. So depending on if someone is vegan, vegetarian, are they, a pescatarian? Are they a vegetarian that consumes eggs and dairy or not? Like, all of those distinctions are going to make for more challenging or less challenging iterations based on, and also food intolerance. Like, if you have someone who's, vegan and can't tolerate soy, pretty limited options, right? So there's a huge range in there. So I'm like, who should I speak to in this question? So, like, starting wide and then maybe going more narrow. So if someone is pescatarian, be very simple to get. You don't need to have poultry. You don't need to have meat. Fish is very, very dense with protein, very absorbable nutrition, very absorbable protein. So having, a couple servings of fish, and if you eat eggs, eggs are like 6 grams of protein. So if you're eating about, 30 grams, if you eat 3 times a day, that would not happen with a couple of eggs. But if you consume, for example, a collagen powder, and you have yourself a nice soup or a drink, and you mix in collagen, several tablespoons of that, and you have some legumes in the soup, you could easily get 20 to 30 grams of protein, no problem. Then maybe you have a serving of fish, and then maybe you have a tempeh stir fry for dinner. You're going to be getting those protein requirements, no problem. If you don't consume fish, but you do consume eggs and dairy, again, like Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. I love like probiotic cottage cheese because it checks off several boxes. You're feeding your gut, and you're getting a great amount of protein. So you can have, cottage cheese in the morning with like some berries, get the antioxidants, get some fiber in there. And then if you're having, again, you could do like a soup that has beans or mushrooms or both, or some chopped up tempeh or tofu, vegetables. And then dinner, maybe you're having, so I don't know if you've heard of mycoprotein, but it's basically, it sounds very strange, but it's like from spores. So it's like a fungal protein, but it's very eco-friendly way to get protein sources. And so that's one of the things that's now on the radar. Quorm, I think, is the big brand for that item, but they do burgers and whatnot, burgers being in quotes because it's not meat. So those could be sources. Grains are much lower in protein than most people think, and very, very, very high in starch. So it can be problematic for pregnant women, especially those at greater risk for gestational diabetes, because you're getting about the protein in one egg, but like 40 grams of starch. So it's just triple or quadruple the amount of the amount of starch that you get for the protein. So it's really not a good source. Nuts and seeds can be decent, again, not awesome, usually less than one egg. And so it's easy for one to consume a lot of calories trying to get protein from nuts and seeds. But it doesn't tend to be a great source in and of itself. So doing combinations of factors is the best bet if you're not consuming fish or meat or poultry for whatever reason. Doing a combination of foods to get, again, nuts and seeds are great for fiber and fat soluble vitamins, and they're high in antioxidants, and they have some protein, but they also have carbohydrate. So they're not a protein food. In my book, they're not a protein food. They have protein, but they're not a staple for protein.
So if someone so collagen really plays an important part if you're not a meat source or dairy source for.
Yeah, and you can do marine collagen. So again, collagen is from animals, so not everyone is going to
right
be on board for that. I've had clients that were vegetarian, and they realized the wall that they were coming up against trying to get their protein needs met to try and reach their health goals. And collagen can be so great, especially if you're pregnant, not feeling like eating, and you can mix some collagen in some tea and then you can drink it, right? So collagen is basically it's the amino acids. It's like the complete broken down protein element from animal source. They have marine collagen, which is from seafood, and it doesn't taste like anything. It doesn't taste like fish. So it's completely broken down. So it's incredibly easy to digest and absorb, which is great.
Yeah. And it's also even when you have multiples, right? So the protein, not just the protein, but everything is kind of doubled, not doubled, but
it's synergistic.
Yeah,
it synergizes. So if you have some collagen and some protein, it actually boosts the absorption of both. It's
cool.
very beneficial. Mm-hmm.
Cool. And is there? Oh no.
What's wrong?
Oh, I thought I lost you guys.
Here.
My screen just went blank. And it was so funny. 2 seconds before that, I was like, oh my gosh, what if something ever like that happened? And then that happens, and I was like, oh my gosh. So is there any supplements that are really crucial to take on a daily basis or a weekly basis or whatever it is while you're pregnant? I know iron is such a controversial kind of thing sometimes, because some people are saying, yes, take iron pills. And then there's some people that are like, no, do not do the iron pills. Get it from food. So I was just wondering what your take on iron and also other supplements. Is there something that pregnant women or even postpartum moms should really take extra in a pill form?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I used to, decades ago, I would tell people, if you eat really high quality food and organic, you don't need to take any supplements. You can get everything you need from food. But I don't say that anymore. I don't believe that anymore. Our soil has gotten so depleted of nutrition. And now we have the science to back it up. I mean, we know like magnesium is really deficient in soil, for example. So I don't believe that eating a great diet is actually supplying us with everything that we need anymore. And we're also under a lot more stress from environment, just from pollution, from toxins in household cleaning supplies, or even like what our homes are built with. Like there's a lot of artificial things that our bodies are learning to navigate living with. And some of your audience may know about microplastics, just how like we do not eliminate some of the toxins that we've created, and they are accumulating, and that's terrifying to me. So like we can do so much. Like I haven't learned how to completely avoid plastic. Like it's just everywhere, right? So I try to reduce. I drink out of a glass bottle. I recommend drink from an inert surface, eat from an inert surface, right? Stainless or glass, a non-toxic coated ceramic, like cook with those things, drink from those, eat from those. You don't want to eat from aluminum utensils or aluminum, like a stainless or a silicone, like those are inert from what we understand now. I hope we don't learn something else later. Anyway, my point is that we're using more nutrients than ever before to counteract what our environment and what just modern technology has brought our way. So we are, number one, not getting as much nutrition, but we're using more of that nutrition. So I do think that taking a really high quality, bioavailable, multiple vitamin on a daily basis is something we all should be doing. Not the exact same one, but something. As far as iron goes, some people are going to benefit from taking a supplement with iron, while others, that's totally the wrong call based on their own iron levels. So I think if there's a reason why you need extra iron and your doctor's recommended that you supplement with iron, then do so. But if not, you probably don't need a supplement with iron. And again, family history is going to play a part in that as well. If you have hemochromatosis, if you have a condition in which your body really likes to hold on to iron, you definitely don't want to be taking an iron supplement. If you tend to be deficient, I would look at why. Is something going on with your gut? Are you not absorbing your iron for some reason? That would be the first thing. I do work with clients who are anemic, or they have this like borderline history, and they're like, yeah, when I was pregnant, I actually was anemic, but before that, I was on the fence with it. I was on the edge. It's like, okay, that's a great tell for when you start building up your iron. Maybe that's a time where maybe you didn't eat much meat, just because you did, like, there wasn't a really strict ethical reason why, or religious reason why, but you just didn't. But that could be an invitation. Like maybe you do need to build your iron up a bit through nutrition. For example, like liver, I know what some people are going to say, liver is one of the most nutrient dense, nutritious foods on the planet. And not everyone likes the taste of liver or would ever think to have it. But taking like a desiccated, like a dried up liver supplement is a great bioavailable way to get iron. You could also, again, I hope I'm not grossing anybody out, but you could get a liver ground up in like ground beef, for example, and mix that into sauces. So it's not like iron tasting forward. It's just really umami. Like it's got this wonderful kind of flavor to it. I usually do that in my spaghetti, and I've had my friends like, oh my gosh, what do you put in your spaghetti? I'm like, you really want me to tell you? And it's so good. Like it's just, there's something about it. It's so grounding. And I'm like, yeah, I've asked my butcher to, I source really high quality organ meats and then grind it in ground beef and then crumble that into the sauce. So it's not like super strong, but you're getting so much more nutrition from it. So those are some ideas of how, like, you could mix it up in a meatloaf, or mix it up in burgers, or mix it up in sauces, so it's not just so gamey or, irony or organ meat tasting. Oh, and yes, I do, as a hosted, like, great, I need your recipe. I have it on my blog. So if you just, I can post my website in the chat for you. And if you just look up my I think it's called Beck's Bolognese, healthnow.com. So that's my website. And I do have that posted. I also have some other recipes on there with ideas like that. How you can incorporate organ meats, because we're not so good at doing that in the United States, or certain parts of the United States. The rest of the world is pretty good about eating like nose to tail, they call it, with the animal, eating, not wasting and not throwing out some of the most nutritious parts of the animal. And many of our ancestors understood this, and it was incorporated into cooking. And the organ meats were the most prized, and like there would actually, some tribes would like have rituals where they, whoever hunted the animal got to pick, and they would pick the most nutrient dense parts of the animal. It wasn't the filet mignon, like it wasn't like the meat part, it was like an organ meat or a certain cut. That like they had this wisdom, this inherent knowledge that it was really nutritious.
Cool. And you said, like, after your second trimester, you experienced a lot of nausea. So any tricks?
Yeah, those CBAMs definitely helped.
Okay.
And my husband, I would just get a look on my face. Sometimes, like, we'd be in the car, he'd just be sitting next to me, and he would see it like wash over me, and he would reach out and like grab and pressure point that, I don't know what that point is called, but the I'm gonna puke point, and he'd push on that, and it really helped take the edge off. But I was just queasy a lot. I mean, I did the ginger tea, I did the mint tea. One of my best friends is a naturopathic doctor. She would, create these tinctures for me, and they helped a little. They probably helped a lot, but I still had a ton of nausea. It didn't always lead to, letting go of the nutrients, but I just felt queasy a lot. So it did help with vomiting. And it was like heavy on the ginger and the mint, and probably some homeopathics and whatever wisdom she infused into it. And I, kind of would eat. So this is kind of speaking to what I spoke of earlier, which is like honoring, like, what's the, like, do the least harm way I can satisfy this craving, right? Because I had some cravings where I was like straight up arguing with myself, like, that's just a no, like, I'm just not gonna go get that. I don't ever eat that. I don't want to put that into my body. Like, one of them was like Jell-O. I don't eat Jell-O, and like most of the Jell-Os out there are total trash. They've got food coloring and tons of sugar and corn syrup, and they're just trash. And I could not shake that craving. And like, now I actually know how to make my own Jell-O, and I do have recipes on my site. So all of you can learn from me that way. Oh my gosh, that would have been so amazing to have had that knowledge at that time. But I didn't know how to make my own Jell-O with tea and honey. But my husband went to like 4 different stores and like found one that had no food coloring, and it was like sweetened with juice. And I had like 1 cup of that Jell-O, and then I was good. I didn't want it again for the rest of the pregnancy. We had like the 6-pack of Jell-O in our fridge for like forever. I just did it that one time. So like certain ways of satisfying the craving in like the do the least harm way. Like, how can I satisfy this with, eating something that's, organic or, high quality. Everyone swore I was having a boy because I did crave protein some of the time. I also craved a ton of starch, and I wanted spicy. Like the first 3 weeks of my pregnancy, like before I actually got confirmation I was pregnant, I wanted homemade grass-fed beef chili, no exaggeration, 3 meals a day for 3 weeks. That's all I ate. Like, that's all I wanted. And they're like, my husband's like, do you need a pregnancy test? Like, you pregnant? Yeah. So, yeah.
Any special recommendations for when you're breastfeeding?
So you froze
Oh, that's okay.
and then breast.
For breastfeeding postpartum, is there anything that you would really recommend nutritionally wise, more than any other time?
Stay hydrated. It's really easy, to get dehydrated when you're like trying to keep the right position and, deal with all of the life that's happening around you. So sit, like, before you start nursing, have someone or get some beverage for yourself, like a big mug of tea. Like, I loved mother's milk tea. It was just like, oh yeah. So I had like just enormous mugs of mother's milk tea or big glasses of water. So staying hydrated is really important. And meal trains are amazing. Like, that initial introduction to breastfeeding, like that was tricky. It was not like, oh, we had this perfect latch and it was amazing and beautiful. That was hard work. And I was in like a lot of pain for a good 6 weeks. Like, no one really warned me, I feel, adequately about how much it wouldn't have changed my choice, but it was hard, harder than I expected. So it was really helpful to have leftovers. So I recommend and meals, and so it's like we were able to do a lot of nutritious food that you might not have the energy to be making. And broth is so, again, a great source of protein. It's got constituents in it called glycosaminoglycans that help with repairing damage, and your body is repairing so much postpartum. So doing warm foods, broths, I definitely am a huge fan of bone broth because of those glycosaminoglycans and how they repair. And I do have a blog on, about that for anybody who wants to read more. You can go to my website, and Mari, you're on it. Like, you're like, read mine. Yeah, so there's, I have some bone broth recipes posted on my website, and some really great soups made with bone broth. My meatball soup was made by one of my best friends. She was the first person that brought me food after I birthed my daughter, and I lived off of that meatball soup. It was just like, my body was such a yes to that. The vegetables and the grass-fed meat and like all the broth, it was just like exactly what my body needed. Helped me stay hydrated, really nourished, helped keep my energy up. So if you can make things ahead of time, or have things made ahead of time and you freeze them to kind of have a surplus, it can make that transition easier. If you're lucky enough to have people cooking for you or bringing you food, those are some things that you could ask for. Warming foods. Babies are different in what they tolerate, so that can make it a little tricky. I know that some mothers struggle, or their children struggle with colic, and that can be a food reaction, or that can just be your baby's digestive system working itself out. But I know that garlic and onions or strong spices can be an issue, but they're not necessarily. So that's something that you kind of don't know until you're in it, and your baby is either reacting really great or not reacting so great. And any food, like if you have a food sensitivity now, that's something that your child could react to during that breastfeeding phase as well. And then they could not have a problem with it later. So there's a question. What do you suggest for mamas craving sweets? I hear ya. I hear ya. I have a lot of recipes on my site for healthier desserts. So depending on the person, there are different sweeteners that are just least likely to cause the increases in blood sugar that lead to potentially issues in the development of the baby, and perhaps gestational diabetes, or perhaps just having a lot more sweet cravings. Like those are all risks with sweets, is it can raise your blood sugar. It can also make you want more sweets. Sometimes if you're really lucky, you'll have oh, I want something sweet, and you'll have a piece of fruit and you're like, oh, and I'm great for a week. That was not my experience. The more sweets I gave, if I had cravings for sweets and I had them, I tended to want more and more and more. And that's just my constitution. That not everyone's like that. So again, how do I do the least harm? Well, what is naturally sweet are fruits. So or root vegetables they can satisfy sweet cravings as well. And so you could consider, okay, sometimes if I want something sweet, I actually need more protein. Does that do the trick? No. Okay. Or yes, it did. Or I'm thirsty. Maybe that satisfies it. If it doesn't, start with, berries or melon, or, a tart green apple. Tart green apples like Granny Smith's are also great for nausea. So that's a great thing. I used to do, I chop up apples and cook them in a little ghee and cinnamon and sea salt. So good. And it just really, and I do like fresh whipped cream with vanilla stevia in it. Sometimes no stevia at all. So stevia is a sweetener that doesn't raise your blood sugar. And I would do a little bit of that in there and have that on the cinnamon apples. You could do a little walnuts if you want. So satisfying. I have a banana custard recipe that's very protein forward. It's pretty much like banana, eggs, and like coconut oil, I think. I feel like, and vanilla. And it's like super, super simple, so delicious. And again, like you're satisfying your cravings, but you're also getting minerals. Bananas have a lot of potassium. Oh, wow. Sorry. Whew. Oh my gosh, we're almost at time. That was my timer dinging me. You get me talking about food. And so there's a lot of recipes on my website. So I gave some specific examples, but feel free to go on there and type in dessert and you will get all sorts of my own discoveries, as well as recipes that I've found over the years that I absolutely love that are healthier options.
Cool. Does anyone else, Mari, do you have any questions? Mari Wood? You're good?
Mostly I'm just so hungry now and I want to eat all these things. This makes me so hungry.
Like that apple stuff. I love apples and geese and warmed up. It's just like so yummy, and especially in a fall day.
I've definitely made something similar, but like a less healthy version of that. But I was going to say, like, I've been thinking about organ meat a lot, and the idea of mixing it into like burgers, or like, you could mix it into the ground beef with the chili or with anything, because I've been really intimidated about trying this and about my family's reaction. So I really love that idea so much.
Oh, good. I'm really glad. I found and posted the link to that bolognese, my spaghetti with the organ meat in there.
Cool.
And there's a source for where you could get it. Although nowadays it's so much more available than it was 13 years ago for me. It's more available to get good quality.
Rebecca, thank you so much. It was so, and I know it will be really beneficial for us that are here, and then for those who are listening. So, and I've worked with you, and we've been going back and forth, and you have so much knowledge, and I just really appreciate it. You've made a difference, and you make a difference. So thank you for that. And I'll make sure in the email when I send out the recording, I'll put your email address in there too, so people can reach out to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was such a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and lots of love to you and your tribe. And I definitely hope that y'all try out some recipes and let me know what how you enjoy them, and if they really hit the spot, or if you develop some twist on them that you want to share. I love that. It's like an evolving science and creative endeavor.
Yeah. So thank you. And next Birth Cafe is 11/11 at 11 with Jenny Putt. She's a pelvic floor therapist. And so she'll be joining us. And that will be 1 year of having Birth Cafe every month.
Wow.
Next November. So exciting. So thank you all for coming, and I'll see you guys all soon. Thank you all.